One of the most populated places in the world, the streets of New York City, can be filled with more than just cars and people. Grab a blanket, turn off your lights for 3 stories where the population of ghosts is so very dense. Adelie Ghost. This happened in 1978 in Lower Manhattan. I used to work at a gourmet deli on West Broadway. I worked nights and we closed at around 1 a.m. For an extra $20, I had the job of buffing the wooden floors with a buffer machine every Friday night after we closed. Above the deli was a sort of club restaurant where my boss tended bar and his wife hosted. I think it was not legal and it had the feel of an after-hours club to it. Once we closed downstairs, everybody would go to the back and go up the stairs to the club. I was downstairs this one Friday night, totally by myself doing the floors. After about 45 minutes, I finished and went to unplug the machine. To get to the plug, I had to pass to the door to the basement. There was no real door that closed. That had been removed, and all the lights were on down there in the basement. As I passed the opening, I glanced down the steps and saw something standing there at the bottom of the steps, looking like he was just about to climb up the stairs. I passed by after seeing this maybe 1 foot and unplugged the machine. I immediately turned and went downstairs. I was thinking that maybe someone from upstairs had gone down to the basement for supplies for the club, and I hadn't heard them because of the noise the machines made. So I went downstairs to find them and tell them that I was closing up. I went into the room to the right of the stairs where all the soda and Pepsi and 7-Up were kept. No, not there. I walked down the hall and opened the walk-in refrigerators. No one in them either. I walked further down the hall looking into this corner and I was thinking to myself, where did this guy go? It wasn't until I got to the end of the hall and I was facing a brick wall in front of me that my thought was, this is a ghost. All the hairs on my neck and head felt electric. Then I turned and ran out of the basement. I grabbed the machine and slammed it into the closet and turned out the lights and went up the stairs 2 at a time to the club. I was sitting at the bar and my boss, who was the bartender, comes up to me and says, "Hey, you're all white, what's the matter?" My boss was a guy who I considered to have no sense of humor. I said to him that he wouldn't believe me if I told him. He told me, "Try me." I told him the story and he asked me to describe what the guy looked like. He told me then that when he was building the bar late one night, all by himself, he looked up and saw a guy at the end of the room watching him. My boss did a double take and looked down to grab his hammer for a weapon. A second of an action, when he looked back, nobody was there. Nobody. One other side note. Before they installed an alarm system, they hired a friend to sleep in the kitchen upstairs at the club. One night while he was sleeping, something grabbed his foot and shook it hard. The friend grabbed his clothing and went out the fire escape and wouldn't do that job anymore. Children see the darndest things. I used to babysit a lot when I was in high school. In our small town, which we consider a hamlet, there was a huge house in the center of it. Some lady bought it, used it for a bed and breakfast for about 10 years, and her family lived there. Her husband was sick and had passed away. A couple years after his death, she sold the house. Then a military bought the house. I noticed the family outside one day, and since it's such a small town, I thought I would go introduce myself to them. They had 3 small children, 3 beautiful little boys who I've become to love and care for very much. At any rate, I told them that if they ever needed a babysitter, I would be more than happy to babysit for them. They didn't really know anyone in the town, and for a while I didn't get a call for babysitting. But the wife, who wasn't too off from my age, wanted to hang out. So we hung out, and while we became really great friends, the children got to know me. Her and I were talking, and we had a weird feeling. She told me that the house creeped her out, and she thought it was haunted. It was an old house, and who knows what could have happened in there. Well, her oldest son, who was only 5 at the time, came into the living room where we were sitting and said, "Mommy, Ashley, do you hear those screams? Mommy, help that man." Amanda was scared, and she asked her son what man she was talking about, and he said, "The man at the bottom of the stairs. Mommy, he's on fire. Help him get some water." We were freaked out and didn't know what to do. We went to the bottom of the stairs and didn't see a man, of course. We ignored it. The very next day, we were outside relaxing in the yard, and her oldest came to us again and said, "Mommy, I'm going to go inside and play with the Good Brothers." We thought he was talking about his 2 younger brothers, so she said, "Okay." He went inside, but we looked up and the other 2 boys were playing in the sandbox. So I went in the house and saw Jet, the oldest one, playing in the toy room and talking loud and laughing. I asked him who he was talking to, and he said, "The Good Brothers, Ashley." I ran out to Amanda, and I told her that she needed to come inside the house. We got freaked out, so we started researching the house. We looked into the old barn, and there was tons of papers and information on the house. Apparently there was a fire in the hall at the bottom of the stairs, and a man died in flames. We got scared, so we went to the stairs and pulled back the carpet that was on the floor, and there was a burnt spot. I never had that many chills run through my body. Then, the Good Brother thing seemed like it could have just been Jet's imagination. We didn't think anything of it, but one day, we went up to the loft at the top of the house. There are 3 floors on this house. After the attic, there is a little loft with windows where you can look out to the town. We went up there to look around one night, and there was tons of writing on the walls, where people had signed the walls and wrote quotes and things, even writings from way back in the 1890s. We were signing it ourselves, and I looked up, and above my head I saw, "Long live the Good Brothers." There was no way that Jet wrote that. He was only 5 and 3.5 feet tall. We got freaked out and ran downstairs. Also in that house, there was a hallway that they didn't use because there's 2 extra bedrooms they didn't need, so they shut it off. Well, in that hallway, there is the washer and dryer. I was washing some blankets for her, and I got really creeped out when I walked into the hall. There was one room that is kind of dark and creepy. I went in it before, and it still felt weird. I usually ran past it if I had to go to the laundry room. Well, I found out about the woman who owned it before. Her husband died in that room. He died of tobacco-caused lung cancer. And to add to that, 5 days after I found out that he had died in that room, Chet said that he heard Uncle Charlie coughing upstairs, and it was bothering him. We asked who Uncle Charlie was, and he said, "The man that sleeps in the room next to the washer." We got freaked out because the woman's husband's name was Charles. Jet wouldn't know that. We were scared. Needless to say, they live in Italy now. Now the superintendent of my old high school lives there. She doesn't have young kids, and she says that she hasn't seen anything weird. Tell me what you think. Boy at the cemetery. A few years ago, I was going to the cemetery with my mom to visit my grandpa. My grandpa is buried in Pine Lawn, on the side where the deceased are buried in slots and walls. Across the street, and a little bit down the block from my grandpa, are my grandma's parents, who we also visit when we go visit my grandpa. Directly across the street from my grandpa's plot is a wooded area where no one goes because there are no plots there, and next to that is a construction site where they are building more plots. So on this particular day, my mom and I were stopping by the cemetery, and then we were going to my aunt's house. It was raining pretty heavily, so we decided to sit in the car in front of the wall where my grandpa is and not get out, which we rarely do. My mom was looking over at my grandpa's plot, and I turned around and looked into the wooded area for a minute. Next to one of the trees, I saw a teenage boy who looked about 15, with a black, almost mushroom haircut, a white shirt with red writing across it, red basketball shorts and sneakers. He was staring directly at me, expressionless, but looked just like you and me. The only thing that I thought was a little strange was that he was completely dry even though it was raining hard. I turned around to tell my mom to look at the boy in the woods, just standing there in the rain. But when we looked back there was no one standing there. It would have been impossible for him to run out of sight that quickly, as I was only turned around for a second or two. Also, even if he had run, the only places he would have run to would have been my grandfather's plot, or down the block, which both had been very visible to us. The construction site where they're building more plots is fenced off, so no one can get in there. I was a little spooked, but didn't think anything of it. A week later, it was much nicer out, and we went back to the cemetery to visit my grandpa and great-grandparents. When we were at my great-grandparents' plot, I started reading the plots of other deceased people. I was shocked when I looked over at the plot a few places away from my great-grandparents and saw a 15-year-old boy who was buried there. For the past couple years, I've been trying to find records of him online or a picture of him, but it either costs a ton of money or I get different results, as his name is pretty common. I will always wonder if he was the boy I saw in the woods.